The spreadsheet has 52 tabs. Eric knows what each one does without looking. Revenue sensitivity sits in column F, terminal assumptions in H. The error is not visible yet, but he knows it exists. It always does. It is 5:38 a.m. The office lights are still off, and his screen is the only source of illumination, a quiet grid of numbers resolving into something that will later be presented as certainty. He built most of this model himself. The inherited sections are cleaner, simpler, less ambitious, and less wrong. Eric's title is Senior Associate, 2 words that mean he is trusted to build but not to decide. He has held the role long enough that no one questions his output, only his conclusions, just enough to remind him where the boundary is. He prepares materials for meetings he is not invited to attend. He adjusts assumptions based on feedback delivered secondhand. He watches decisions happen through version histories and time-stamped edits. He is precise. He is early. He is invisible. The firm manages just under $3 billion, large enough to matter, small enough to be ignored by those who truly do. Eric models downside scenarios for assets he will never control, flags risks and language calibrated to avoid discomfort, reduces uncertainty into ranges that feel manageable. Nothing changes. He corrects the next model, sends the next deck, waits for comments that arrive without context. Eric is useful, and he is not advancing. The message arrives at 6:11 a.m., not on his work email but his personal inbox. One line. I read your appendix. No signature. Eric stares at it longer than necessary, not because it is unclear, but because it is precise. The appendix is where he places the work no one reads, sensitivity layers, edge cases, the logic that does not fit into summary slides. Another message follows. Page 47. Your duration mismatch is correct. Eric's hand pauses over the keyboard. He does not respond. He opens the document instead, scrolls to the page, finds the footnote buried under formatting layers. He remembers writing it late. He remembers softening the language before sending it. The phone rings. Unknown number. Eric answers. The voice does not introduce itself with context. It does not need to. The name is enough. Eric has seen it before, attached to outcomes that moved faster than consensus. The voice speaks without urgency, referencing his work with a precision that removes doubt. Not the main thesis, not the conclusion, the structure beneath it. It says the partners ignored it. It says they always do when the implication is inconvenient. It says something is being built. It says it does not need another analyst, it needs someone who can see where models break before they break. Eric listens without interrupting. A timeline is given, 12 months. No mention of compensation. The absence is intentional. Your upside is tied to your decisions, the voice says, not your output. Then silence, and the line disconnects. Eric sits there longer than expected. The office is still empty, the model still open. He duplicates the file and begins again, not for the firm, but for himself. He removes softened language, restores original assumptions, stresses the model beyond what would be acceptable. He pushes variables until the structure fails, then rebuilds it cleaner, more direct, less concerned with reception. The output stabilizes. Eric watches the final cell change. It holds, not narrowly, but decisively. He closes the file. Eric's resignation is one paragraph. No explanation, no negotiation. The response is polite, controlled, slightly surprised. He is asked to reconsider. Eric declines without elaboration. 3 weeks later, he is in a different room, smaller, quieter, more expensive. There are no presentations here, no polished decks, only terminals, whiteboards, and conversations that begin mid-sentence. The capital is real, the timeline shorter, the consequences immediate. Eric's title is different, but titles are not discussed. What matters is this. Eric is now expected to decide. At first, the shift is subtle. Eric speaks less, listens more, observes how positions are built, not described, how risk is sized, not summarized. The language is compressed. Assumptions are stated once. If they hold, the position stands. If they break, it disappears. There is no attachment, only exposure. Eric is given a small allocation. It is described as a test, but it is a measurement. He builds his first position slowly, not because he is uncertain, but because he is mapping the system. Eric understands the thesis, the macro backdrop, interest rate differentials, currency pressure, policy lag. What he is learning is timing. When he enters matters more than why. The position moves, not immediately, then all at once. Eric exits where he planned. No adjustment, no hesitation, no celebration. The number updates. No one comments. The silence is confirmation. Responsibility expands, gradually at first, then without notice. Eric is included in conversations he used to reconstruct from notes. He is asked questions that assume he already has answers. Eric stops preparing to be correct and starts preparing to be accountable. There is a difference. He feels it. Eric begins tracking patterns, not just market behavior, but decision behavior, his own and others. The conditions under which confidence expands, the signals that precede overexposure. He writes them down privately, not as a system, just observation. The fund grows. Capital follows performance. Performance follows discipline. Eric's allocation increases. He is now responsible for numbers that used to exist only as abstractions. They are not abstract anymore. They move because he moves them. By the end of the first year, the number in Eric's personal account reaches a point that requires adjustment, not emotionally, but logistically. He speaks to advisors about structures designed to preserve what he has not yet decided he wants. Eric is, by any conventional definition, financially independent. The realization does not arrive with clarity. It arrives as a quiet fact. Eric could stop. The system would continue. He sits with that thought longer than expected, then returns to work. The pressure changes, not in intensity, but in nature. Eric is no longer trying to prove competence. That has been established. He is now managing consequence. The scale has increased. The margin for error has not. Eric sees opportunities others do not. He also sees risks others ignore. Sometimes they are the same thing. He is invited into rooms where information is not evenly distributed. Conversations occur that blur the boundary between insight and advantage. Eric is careful, not because he is told to be, but because he understands the cost of crossing lines that are not clearly drawn. He documents decisions, and what he chooses not to act on, not for compliance, but for protection. Eric's world narrows gradually. The people around him either understand what he does or need something from someone who does. Conversations outside this sphere begin to feel distant, not less valuable, just less relevant. Eric notices it, but does not correct it. There is not enough time. He begins to feel the weight differently, not as stress, but as awareness. Every position connects to something real, pensions, institutions, systems beyond his field of view. Eric understands it intellectually first, then operationally. He makes decisions knowing they will matter to people he will never meet. He accepts this, because the alternative is to step away. Eric does not step away. The first time Eric moves a market, he recognizes it immediately, not because of the size, but because of the timing. He enters, the market follows. The sequence is clear. Eric watches it happen in silence. There is no reaction, just recognition. He influenced the outcome, briefly. The market continues unchanged in any permanent way. Eric sits back and understands something that does not translate easily into language. Influence is not ownership. He shapes the movement, but he does not control the system. Time passes. The fund grows. Eric's role expands without formal acknowledgement. Decisions route through him, not by mandate, but by default. He hires people more specialized than himself and learns to trust their depth without surrendering his judgment. Ego adjusts slowly. The number in Eric's account continues to increase. It stops changing his behavior, then starts to, subtly. Eric notices a shift in how he evaluates time, what he accepts, what he ignores. The constraints that once defined his decisions are gone. New ones appear, less visible, more internal. Eric revisits the thought. He could stop. This time it stays longer. He considers what stopping would mean, not financially, but structurally. The routines would dissolve, the decisions would disappear, the system that organizes his attention would no longer exist. He would have freedom, but also absence. Eric sits with that. The next trade is larger, not because Eric wants it to be, but because the opportunity requires it. The thesis is clean, the downside defined, the upside asymmetrical. Eric presents it. The room is quiet. He recognizes the moment. He has seen it before, from the other side. Eric proceeds. The markets open. Positions move. Numbers change. Eric adjusts, not emotionally, but mechanically. Eric is financially independent. The statement is accurate. It is also incomplete. He is no longer constrained by necessity. Eric is defined by choice. He continues, not because he has to, but because he does not yet know who he is without this. The screen updates. The model refreshes. The system continues. Eric watches it. He participates. He influences, briefly. Then it moves on, without him, with him, it does not matter. Eric understands now. The independence he built removed the need to play. It did not remove the game. And somewhere inside the structure he constructed so precisely, so deliberately, without error, Eric is still inside it.